And hello, everyone. Welcome to my official final 2024 election forecast between former President Donald Trump and the current Vice President Kamala Harris. Hard to believe we are 1 week away from the election, so without further ado, let's dive right in. I'm recording this off of my phone, so I apologize for the slight movement. We can see in the popular vote, we're going to start with that. You see Donald Trump is ahead by 0.4% in the popular vote. For contrast, on this day in 2020, you can see Joe Biden was ahead by 7.4%. He went on to win the popular vote by 4.5%, so he was overestimated by 3 points in the final week of the election just 4 years ago. Meanwhile, back in 2016, Hillary Clinton was ahead by 4.6% in the popular vote. She won it by just 2.1%, so she was overestimated by 2.5 points in the final stretch. So with Trump being ahead by 0.4 in the popular vote, he is looking really, really good to win this election. The question is, just how good is he looking to do so in this final week? Well, let's go right into our key battlegrounds and see where we are. We start in the Tar Heel state, and I apologize for these advertisements that pop up that are a little bit annoying. So we can see in the Tar Heel state of North Carolina, Donald Trump leads by 0.9%, and you can see he got that boost from the updated Travolger poll that has him up by 3.2 in the poll that came out today. Of course, Travolger, I know they're a Republican pollster. Many people say, oh, well, they're biased toward Republicans. Not necessarily. They were among the top 2 most accurate in 2020 alongside Atlas Intel. So for them to come out with, meaning Travolger, for them to come out with a poll today of Trump +3, that is very, very huge for the former president. And of course, this comes also on the heels of Kamala Harris taking away the $2 million in campaign ads that she was using for North Carolina, and she will be using them more than likely in one of the Rust Belt states because her campaign has said they just do not have a path through North Carolina, especially with the early voting trends that have come out of there and also with the current voting trends out of Georgia and Arizona. All 3 of those states, Georgia, Arizona, North Carolina, favoring Donald Trump as of today. So that boost, as I was saying a few minutes ago, he's up now 0.9% in North Carolina. For contrast, Joe Biden was ahead there on this day in 2020 by 0.6%. Joe Biden was actually ahead in North Carolina for the whole entire cycle. And then, as you can see when we scroll down, he ended up losing North Carolina by 1.3%. Hillary Clinton lost North Carolina to Donald Trump by 3.6%. In 2016, Clinton was ahead by 3 points on this date then. So she was overestimated by about 4.5 to 5 points. I don't think that same polling error applies here, but still, for Trump to be up 0.9 right now, that is very, very huge. Remember, he won North Carolina by 1.2 in 2020. So going back to our presidential election map, that with Trump being up 0.9, that puts him in the tilt Republican column on our map. You can see I also put in the states of New Mexico, Minnesota, and New Hampshire as toss-ups, as we've gotten some really, really good polls coming out of those states for Trump. Now, right now, out of those states, only New Hampshire has temporarily flipped Republican, but I will get to that here in just a few minutes. So now going down to Georgia, of course, North Carolina worth 16 electoral votes. Georgia also worth 16 electoral votes. So 2 very, very important key states. You can see in 2016, Biden was ahead here by 0.4. He only won Georgia by 0.2, which was the first time since 1992 that a Democrat has flipped the peach state. Of course, back in the 90s, that would have been former President Bill Clinton. In 2016, Trump was ahead in Georgia by 2.5. He won it over Hillary Clinton by a little over 5. You can see Trump leads right now by 2.3% in Georgia. You can see the updated Travolger poll going into the aggregate has Trump +2, which literally lines up with all of the other polls that we have seen out of Georgia. Georgia right now is one of the 3 states that is looking solid for Trump as of today. If we account for the 0.2% of error from this day in 2020 with Biden ahead by +0.4, that would mean Trump would be on pace to win Georgia by 2.5%. Georgia would go into the lean Democratic column, lifting Trump to 251 electoral votes. Kamala Harris remains at just 207. Now we go out west to Arizona, the Grand Canyon state. 11 electoral votes up for grabs here. You can see Trump is ahead by 1.3%. Of course, that is a little bit skewed because the CNN poll of Harris +1 went into the aggregate earlier today. I disagree with CNN with Harris +1, especially based off of the early voting trends that we've gotten out of this state that have favored Republicans by a way larger margin than where the early voting was back in 2020. You can see in 2020, this state was a dead tie between Trump and Joe Biden. Joe Biden went on to win it by a very slim margin. Hillary Clinton was ahead by 1.5 in 2016. She went on to lose Nevada by 3.5. Arizona. This is Arizona, so it was a dead tie, Biden and Trump in 2020. It was a narrow Biden win. In 2016, Hillary Clinton was ahead in Arizona by 1.5. She went on to lose it by 3.5. So with Trump being ahead by 1.3, Arizona goes into the tilt Republican column, lifting Trump to 262 electoral votes, meaning that that he can win with either of these remaining states of Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, or Pennsylvania. Either one of these 4 will lift Trump over the 270 threshold to secure the presidency. Of course, Nevada will not get him there, as it is worth just 6 electoral votes. So going back to Nevada, 6 electoral votes here. Trump leads by 0.7%. The CNN poll released this morning has Trump +1. I do agree with that poll, because we've seen some excellent early voting numbers for Trump. 0.7%. Trump is ahead in 2020. Joe Biden was ahead by 4 points in Nevada. He won it by just 2.5. Hillary Clinton was ahead by 1.7 in 2016. She went on to win it by 2.5 as well. 0.7% Trump leads. That goes into the tilt Republican column, lifting Trump to 268 electoral votes. Harris just at 207. Meaning, if Harris were to win all the remaining states that are listed as toss-ups, she would secure the presidency with 270 electoral votes on the nose. Trump would be at 268. So now we go to the Rust Belt trio, beginning in Wisconsin. Wisconsin generally is Wisconsin's literally one of the most conservative states of the key Rust Belt trio. Trump leads by 0.5% here in Wisconsin. Remember, Wisconsin, both in 2016 and 2020, underestimated Trump by a lot, meaning by at least 4 to 6 points in those cycles, respectively. Joe Biden was ahead in Wisconsin at this point in 2020 by 6.7 points. Joe Biden went on to hang on to Wisconsin by just 0.7. He was overestimated by 6 points on the nose. Hillary Clinton, 2016, she was ahead by 6.5. She lost it by 0.7, so she was overestimated by 5.8 points. So going back to our map, we place Wisconsin right now in the tilt Republican column, and that secures Trump the presidency with 278 electoral votes. Kamala Harris, though, remains at just 207. Moving on to the Wolverine state of Michigan. Michigan right now is Harris plus 0.3. Now, one of the reasons for that is you can see the Susquehanna, I don't think I'm pronouncing that right, so I apologize. they have that poll into the aggregate. That's a trash poll. Has Harris +5. No way Harris is winning that state by that much. We also have Quinnipiac, Harris +4 last week. Quinnipiac, another trash pollster. They were rated one of the worst pollsters in 2020. So obviously these results are skewing Trump by quite a bit, because previously, without these liberal polls coming in the aggregate, Trump was ahead at one point by 2 points in Michigan. So for contrast, 2020, Biden was ahead by 8.2. He won it, as we scroll down here, he won it by 2.8. So he was, and you can see here, all these polls and the full list of aggregates had a lot of Harris, then a lot of Trump, and now we're kind of back to a lot of Harris. And you can see Biden was ahead by 8.2 in 2020. He won it by 2.8, so he was overestimated by about 5.5. Hillary Clinton was ahead by 7 points in 2016. She lost it by just 0.31. So she was overestimated by 7 points in actually 6.8 points in 2016. And this state is forecasted to be one of the closest alongside Nevada in this current cycle. Now, I've seen some predictions, some election predictions where Trump is favored to win Michigan by a very razor-thin margin, but for the purpose of this video and the RCP average favoring Harris, I am going to put the state of Michigan in the tilt Democratic column, lifting Harris to 222 electoral votes. Remember, Michigan is considered the bluest out and most liberal out of the Rust Belt trio. And now we get over to Pennsylvania. There's been a lot of talk about Pennsylvania. 19 electoral votes on the table here, the Keystone State. Joe Biden carried Pennsylvania by 1 point, I believe it was 1.8, no, 1.2 in 2020. Trump 0.7 in 2016. So 1.2 for Biden in 2020. He was ahead on this date there by 4.3, so he was overestimated by 3.1. Hillary Clinton was ahead by 5 points in 2016. She won it by just lost it by 0.7, so she was overestimated by about 4.7 points. You can see Trump currently leads by 0.4% in the RCP aggregate average. And now, obviously, there's also a lot of talk about Pennsylvania with all the the potential ballot fraud, as well as just a lot of things that could really end up hurting Trump here. We hope that's not the case. We hope that Trump will maintain this state, but obviously it is not. It is one of the most important states, if not the most important, and definitely favored to be the tipping point in this election. So going back to our map, we place Pennsylvania in the tilt Republican column right now, lifting Trump to 297 electoral votes, Kamala Harris at 222. So that concludes this election video of the Rust Belt and the Sun Belt states. So now I want to go to some other states, beginning, of course, we don't have a lot of polls out of New Mexico, but we do have New Hampshire on here. And you can see we did have a poll from Emerson, has Harris +3. This was a state that Joe Biden carried in 2020 by 7 points. We can see in the RCP average, Harris is ahead by 6.3. So about a 0.7% underwater performance than Biden back in 2020. So based on that, I will put New Hampshire going in the likely Democratic column, lifting the vice president to 226 electoral votes. So that leaves us with New Mexico and Minnesota. Now, we've seen polls out in New Mexico that have had Harris up only by +2 to +3. Remember, this is a state that Joe Biden won by 11 points in 2020, and it is an extremely liberal state, particularly within the city of Albuquerque. Now, outside of Albuquerque, a lot of the state is rural, meaning that would vote to Trump, but there are a lot of Hispanic voters here in New Mexico, and all the Hispanic voters have been turning to Trump more so this year than in any previous election cycle. But for the purpose of this video and for the current polls in New Mexico, I am going to put New Mexico in the lean Democratic column for Harris, meaning she would be on pace to win the state by at least 2 points, and that is where she currently sits based on some recent polls that we've seen out of that state. However, those polls have not been listed on Real Clear Politics. And now we end in Minnesota. Minnesota is the home state of Harris's running mate Tim Walz. Biden carried this state by 10 points, 9 to 10 points in 20. Actually, I think it was 7 points, 7 to 8 points in 2020. We can see we did have a recent poll had Harris +3, but in the RCP average, she leads by 4.3. This would be about a 5-point underperformance than Biden in 2020. So the 4.3% margin for Harris, we will put Minnesota also in the lean Democratic column, meaning she would be projected to win this state by about 2 to 4 points. And based on the current RCP average and also including some of the most recent polls, my final 2024 election prediction forecast: Donald Trump wins this election, 297 electoral votes, Kamala Harris at 241. Now, it's going to be interesting to see within the next 7 days if some of these states change, especially with Michigan. Michigan, I think, is going to be the closest state of the whole entire election and could easily go either way. But for now, I am placing it in Kamala Harris's column because, like I said earlier, it's the most liberal of the Rust Belt trio and is the bluest of those 3 states as well. And also remember that these 3 Rust Belt states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, have not voted separately from each other since 1988. And based on the current RCP average, that trend would happen for the first time since then, with Wisconsin and Pennsylvania narrowly going to Donald Trump, but Michigan going very narrowly to Kamala Harris. And as I mentioned earlier, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina right now are looking the best for Trump, the whole entire Sun Belt. I hope you enjoyed this video, my analysis of the 2024 election and where the race stands as of today. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button below or subscribe to my channel. Thanks again for watching and have a great rest of your week.